Good day, and welcome to the WANA webinar series. As you will notice, all participants have been muted. If you have a question to ask, please send your question into the Q&A panel located on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, or by pressing the three-dot option along the bottom and selecting Q&A panel. Your questions will be answered after the presentation. If you have any technical issues, please send a private chat to the host, the directions of which you can find in the chat window. Thank you for joining. Please welcome Andrew Borntrager.
Hello, everyone. Welcome today to today's WANA webinar entitled Clubhouse Coalitions, Stronger Together, How to Build and Utilize an Effective Regional Clubhouse Coalition. I'm Andrew Borntrager, Clubhouse International faculty and a member of Cora House in Goshen, Indiana, formerly known as Elkhart County Clubhouse, and I had the pleasure of being your moderator. Our webinar's intention today is to highlight some of the impressive initiatives the Clubhouse coalitions around the world are taking on, in spite of the unique challenges that COVID-19 has presented in the recent past. Just as each of our Clubhouse communities are continuously working together to navigate their way through, sorry, Ray, yeah. One moment. Just as each of our Clubhouse communities are continuously working together to defy the odds, the three coalitions you'll hear from today have successfully navigated their way through some notably difficult scenarios. And of course, along the way, they've picked up a number of strategies and perspectives around the ideals of a Clubhouse coalition. Our hope is that their successes and setbacks will provide you with ideas for strengthening your own coalitions and even forming new ones. Our first presenters are from Clubhouse, Ohio. It's probably not common knowledge yet that Ohio has its own formal coalition, and that's because until recently it didn't. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge not only the hard work and effort that has gone into this coalition, but what a major event it is for all of us whenever a region does this successfully. As we'll talk about, coalitions can be a major force for political advocacy, and whenever a new one crops up, our model gains legitimacy in the public eye. So this is a cause for celebration. Now that the state of Ohio has a highly motivated coalition, they've been meeting on a weekly basis with as many other coalitions as possible. Their goal is to learn as much as they can from the established coalitions as they prepare to spread the model across Ohio. With the extremity of that thirst for knowledge, I find it unlikely we'll forget about them anytime soon, so way to go. Next, we'll hear from Indiana's coalition, and unlike many other times that one of us has agreed to do a workshop or plenary on this subject that ultimately becomes a shocking cautionary tale about the dangers of a weak coalition, they'll be focusing on some more recent successes as well, including our journey toward obtaining Medicaid funding and our plans to begin using virtual tools for advocacy, such as using video conferencing to give government officials tours of our facilities without needing to take the extra time to arrange in-person visits. We'll also hear plenty about Andy Wilson's undying love of bureaucrats, so look forward to that. It should prove entertaining. Our final presenters represent one of the world's strongest established Clubhouse coalitions, Clubhouse Norway. Ever the overachievers, they've recently reached their long-term goal of having at least 20 clubhouses in the country, and they'll be sharing about their journey toward that milestone. You might notice that the general tone of this introduction has been celebratory. For many of us, celebration seems to have become novelty in recent times. I'm just going to come out and say it, 2020 has been a dreadful year, and I doubt that I'm alone in wishing it was over. However, both necessity and collective determination, clubhouses all over the world are not just hunkering down and waiting for this storm to blow over. They're adapting, evolving, and sometimes thriving, at least as much as a virtual clubhouse can thrive. That alone is reason to celebrate, even in an era where celebration feels counterintuitive. We know that we're stronger together. Clubhouse International has exciting plans for the coming year to begin the process of creating a more connected clubhouse world through the facilitation of inter-coalition interactions. With this on the horizon, you now have yet another reason to return to your clubhouses and your coalitions with the ideas you gleaned from this workshop. Now that you've listened to me droll on and on about how awesome coalitions are, without giving you any context as to why, I suppose it's time for me to turn this over to the real experts, the people you came here to see. So without further ado, if the lovely people from Clubhouse, Ohio would introduce themselves, that would be fantastic. Take it away.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everyone. Thank you for watching us today. We're really happy to share our information about coalition building with you. And it's a great panel. I'm Lori D'Angelo, the Executive Director of Magnolia Clubhouse in Cleveland, Ohio. And this is my colleague, Cassidy Yatsko, also here at Magnolia Clubhouse. We also have with us Jennifer Mullins from Miracle Clubhouse in Dayton, Ohio, and Greg Shaw from Pathway Clubhouse in Columbus, Ohio.
Hello.
Our clubhouse has been around since 1961, but for many years we were the only clubhouse in the States. Fortunately, over the last few years, clubhouses have developed in Dayton and Columbus, and so we were really glad to now have 3 clubhouses in Ohio. That's better. And we also, for the first time, were able to obtain government funding. So as of the beginning of 2018, government funding was a possibility for this model in Ohio. As a result of that, we've continued to work with the State Department of Mental Health. They have new leadership, and they've offered to assist us in disseminating the model across Ohio. Some of the staff from the State Department were coming to visit Magnolia Clubhouse in March of last year, or this year, it seems so long ago, and COVID struck. So that visit has been postponed and postponed. And in the interim, we started connecting with our clubhouses and decided to formalize our coalition in preparation for what our new work will be, which is to grow the model in the state. So I'm going to turn over the presentation right now to Jennifer, who's going to tell you more about some of our steps in the process.
Thank you, Lori. Hi, my name is Jennifer Mullins, and I work at the Miracle Clubhouse in Dayton, Ohio. I've been a part of the staff since 2013. In March this year, 2020, 3 accredited clubhouses, Magnolia Clubhouse in Cleveland, Miracle Clubhouse in Dayton, and Pathway Clubhouse in Columbus, formed Clubhouse Ohio. We actually began meeting way before COVID, but we took advantage of the time COVID presented us since our buildings were closed. All 3 clubhouses met on Zoom every week as a part of our new hybrid work order day to form Clubhouse Ohio. Together, we began discussing how to form a coalition and what we needed to know about operating and growing the clubhouse model in our state. We sent our official request to Clubhouse International with an intended coalition goals and commitments. And on July 13, 2020, we received a formalized letter recognizing Clubhouse Ohio. We knew there was more information we needed to learn. As we met, we started asking a million questions about the structure, research, advocacy, funding, and at the state level, and education. Some of our questions included, well, what do other coalitions look like, and how did they start? How did they identify the best practices? Should we build a website? What was our action plan? Do your coalitions use bylaws or guidelines? Which one should we use? Do we hire someone to run the coalition? So Clubhouse Ohio developed the following questions to ask our colleagues during our scheduled Zoom meetings. 1, can you provide us with a history of how your coalition began? 2, are you a 501c3? 3, do you find your website to be instrumental? 4, what did you find that worked the most? 5, what did you discover that you didn't know previously? And 6, what do you do for funding? 7, do you promote auspice versus freestanding clubhouses? And 8, anything else you can provide as suggestion for a new coalition of 3 clubhouses. Well, our next project was to expand the network and invite other coalitions to join in on our weekly Zoom meetings. So we began connecting with established coalitions, both in the States and internationally. We were recruited with the assistance of Jack Yatsko, Lee Kellogg, and Anita Lambeck to connect Clubhouse Ohio with other coalitions. The process was smooth. The only difficulty that we encountered there were some staff changes and emails needed to be updated. So we moved on and we began receiving responses from Clubhouse coalitions around the world, jumping at the opportunity to connect with Clubhouse Ohio and share their knowledge and experience with us. Our schedule began to fill up and great conversations began through Zoom. Here's a slide listing the coalitions we have met with. Recently, we met with Norway and Indiana, and here we are together sharing our experiences together. We hope to meet with New York, Maine, and Florida in the future. And thank you to all the coalitions for offering your guidance and the opportunity to make new friends. Thank you. Lori.
Thanks, Jennifer. So now I'm going to share what some of the lessons that we've learned. And we would like the slide, please. We gathered information, as Jennifer described, and one of the main messages we got across coalitions was to insist on the strength of the model, which means to be sure people, of course, understood and were utilizing the standards and had a goal of accreditation and used Clubhouse new development training as well as colleague training. The accreditation process and following the standards and working with training is the way we can ensure the quality of our model and integrity to it. And when clubhouses are doing the model as it's defined, then we can all utilize the evidence of research to support the outcomes that we generate. So this was across the board, and some coalitions had discovered that using a kind of milder version of the standards or not insisting on accreditation really hurt the outcomes that were then generated and went back in their areas or their regions to bring back the focus on accreditation. Next slide, please. There were also varied structures to how coalitions were designed. Some had sort of a rotation of leadership within the group. Others had a lead clubhouse. What we found was less common, but as you will hear with Norway, is very successful in helping really strengthen a clubhouse, is having staff for the coalition. So that's an aspiration for us here at Clubhouse Ohio. And the roles that the staff play focus on government relations and funding. And there was a lot of agreement that funding is key, and it is the first necessary piece so that you can help promote the growth of the model in your area. Developing new and and continuing to develop existing clubhouses, of course, is also a main focus of coalitions. And broader advocacy for people who live with mental illness and policy reform to support improving the conditions for people who live with mental illness. Next slide, please. So another lesson was to set goals, to actually have a target of the number of new clubhouses you would like to establish. Not all the clubhouse coalitions did this, but it is, we found a strengthening aspect of the work, and again, you'll hear more from Norway on that. Target a number of freestanding clubhouses was an idea raised by a few coalitions, and freestanding clubhouses are demonstrated with some research to be stronger. So it's important for the strength of the model to have at least some freestanding clubhouses. And we've set a goal of aspiring to have a minimum average daily attendance of 50. We think that most communities would have at least that many people who could benefit from a clubhouse. And of course, we'd want to have clubhouses available to everyone who could use them. So we don't know yet how many clubhouses there will be in Ohio, but we hope it will be as available as medication to anyone who lives with mental illness. Next slide, please. We also learned that relationships with key stakeholders are essential, and Indiana is going to speak a little bit more to that. In our work, in our state, the government, as I described, the State Department of Mental Health is key to our work. NAMI is an organization of family advocacy. That is also key to the stakeholders that we engage in this process. And then there are two state-level organizations that are also key. One is an organization that brings together all the local, or what we call county, government funding for mental health, the boards. And then another organization that brings together the community mental health centers across the state. So that's our target stakeholder work group as we develop our dissemination of the clubhouse model in Ohio. Next slide, please. We also learned that coalitions need leadership and delegation. Keep the size of the group manageable. Share and combine your outcomes, and the outcome information is what we're all collecting for the Clubhouse Profile Questionnaire. Network strategically with other states and countries. And this research experience that we've had now, speaking with all the coalitions, has provided an amazing method of networking strategically, and we are so happy to share what we can today with everyone. We also learn to educate and make the case for a clubhouse in each local area. There may be different circumstances that you can help define to help build support to bring a clubhouse into each area. And we've heard it's usually easier to start a new clubhouse from scratch than to change an existing program. Although in Ohio, we do have evidence of that being successfully done as well. Next slide, please. So the coalitions across the board assist clubhouses in funding and broader advocacy, in starting clubhouses, which means helping sometimes with the building of a board, with hiring of staff, and helping together advocate for employment opportunities across the state or region. Clubhouse coalitions are working to share communications and marketing, and we are working to establish research for the model within coalitions and coalition regions. So I think that's the end of this part of the presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Cassidy and Greg to tell you more. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Hi, my name is Cassidy Yatsko. I work here at Magnolia Clubhouse. I'm the Development and Communications Coordinator here, and today I'll be presenting with Greg.
Hi, my name's Greg Shaw. I'm a member of Pathway Clubhouse in Columbus, Ohio.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the website development in regards to the coalition and how to start fresh. So one of the first things that we did was we visited other coalitions' websites to gain new ideas.
We determined what platform that we should use for the template of the website and how to make it accessible and disability friendly for all persons with disability.
In addition to our weekly coalition meetings, we also met twice weekly to create the design, add content, and also look at other coalitions' websites again.
We contacted Clubhouse International and we were given permission to add to our website information about the Clubhouse International, the new Clubhouse development training, and the standards and the information about accreditation.
One of the most important things is we wanted to identify our audience. So who would be looking at this website? Some audiences we identified were potential members, family and friends of members, potential donors, state representatives, employers for TEs, and more.
We discussed the importance to collect information from each clubhouse in the coalition and highlight all of their statistics and accomplishments. ADA, employment numbers, independent housing numbers, decrease in hospitalizations, and information that we gather for the CPQ, the education numbers, and any awards.
We also added in all the locations of the clubhouses in the state of Ohio. And again, there's 3 strong clubhouses here in our state, because we wanted to make sure that members who were potentially looking at our website knew how to join a clubhouse. So we added that information in as well. All right, now hand it back to Lori.
Thanks, Cassidy. I think now we turn it over to our friends in Indiana.
Thanks, Lori. And thank you, Clubhouse Ohio. Hey, everyone. My name is Mike Shorter, and I am a team leader at the Carriage House in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm joined today by my friend Susan Crouch from Forge Ahead Clubhouse in Indianapolis. And, of course, by this guy, Andy Wilson, who made the mistake of hiring me 12 years ago and has regretted it ever since.
Every day.
Every single day. The Indiana Clubhouse Coalition, or Clubhouse Indiana, has been around since 2002 and was created with the purpose of being a resource to clubhouses and working groups in our state. Although Carriage House was not the first clubhouse in the state of Indiana, my club was the largest and the only accredited clubhouse at the time. And so Carriage House took a leadership role in the organizing and hosting of meetings. In 2010, changes at the state level removed clubhouse programs from the Medicaid plan, thus ending MRO reimbursement for standards-based clubhouse programs in Indiana. The result of this sudden change was that clubhouses, with the exception of us, Carriage House, were forced into becoming drop-in centers or closed entirely. Andy will be discussing this situation a little later on, so I won't belabor the point. Suffice to say, this was catastrophic for clubhouses in Indiana, and from an official standpoint, the coalition ceased to exist. This did not, however, prevent colleagues from throughout the state from remaining in contact with each other and working toward a solution to the funding issue. As a matter of fact, 2 new clubhouses opened in Indianapolis and in Goshen. That's the clubhouse that Andrew's from, after Medicaid funding was cut. For the next several years, colleagues from throughout Indiana wrote letters and emails, published editorials in newspapers, consulted with lobbyists, and spoke directly with policymakers and bureaucrats. Eventually, and after a truly impressive amount of work, Medicaid funding was restored to clubhouses in Indiana. With that funding, clubs that had transitioned away from our model quickly moved to become accredited clubhouses once again. Also, community mental health organizations realized the benefits of having clubhouses in their counties and began to open clubs and send colleagues to development and comprehensive trainings. With the influx of new clubhouses in our state, it became clear that Clubhouse Indiana must take up its work again to support startups and strengthen existing programs. Typically, the coalition meets once every 2 months at one of the member clubhouses. Obviously, this is a strange year. I'm not sure if you've noticed that. Did you notice that?
We noticed a little bit, yeah.
A little bit. So due to the strangeness, meetings have been held on Zoom ever since March. Because the challenges that we currently face are unprecedented, the Clubhouse Coalition has met every 2 weeks. The agenda always includes news and updates from each clubhouse, an update on the coalition's financial position, problem solving for any clubhouse's specific issues, and committee reports. Compared to other coalitions, our meetings are rather informal. We don't follow Robert's Rules of Order or other conventions of official group meetings. Instead, we rely on hand raising and common politeness to make it through our sessions. We feel as though this is sufficient to give everyone a chance to speak and to be heard. I think at this point, I'd like to mention that there are many practical reasons for our coalition to exist. There's more work to do in Indiana, frankly, than we have time for. This is our clubhouse way, after all. But especially now, in the midst of this pandemic, our primary purpose seems much more clear to me, at least. Clubhouse is a strange and beautiful thing. Our communities are simultaneously very strong and fragile. We've relied on each other more than ever to share ideas and resources. But the knowledge that we are all facing this pandemic together with grace, patience, and love is the coalition's greatest gift. We are not alone. Our individual clubs, our coalitions, and the international community prove that without a doubt. Clubhouse Indiana currently has 3 committees comprised of members and staff which work on specific issues. Clubhouse Development Committee works to support education for and member and staff exchanges in Indiana. Our Communication and Media Committee is currently working on a new coalition website and promotional materials. And our Advocacy and Public Policy Committee has been tasked with communicating with public officials to ensure that support and funding of clubhouses throughout the state is maintained. It's this advocacy committee that my friend and colleague Susan Crouch from Forge Ahead Clubhouse in Indianapolis will be discussing. So, without further ado, take it away, Susan.
Hello, I'm Susan Crouch. I'm a member of Forge Ahead Clubhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana. I regularly attend the Clubhouse Indiana Coalition meetings, and I am on the Advocacy Committee. The committee consists of, but not limited to, 3 staff and 2 members. This is a relatively new committee that is informal and works collaboratively together. We report our progress at the bi-monthly coalition meetings. We plan on attending the meet and greet held at the Capitol building on February the 8th, 2021. We will serve breakfast and lunch and plan on inviting state senators and representatives to this function. We hope to educate them about Clubhouse Indiana and plan on having representatives from several clubhouses throughout the state. There will be some members there to talk about how Clubhouse has impacted how they live with a serious mental illness. Please show the slide. In our first committee meeting, we set some goals. We want to get more politically involved, build relationships with government officials, improve awareness of Clubhouse, and ensure funding for clubhouses throughout the state. We brainstormed ideas for building awareness. Some of those are encouraging local and state government officials to visit clubhouses. An example of that is Circle City's Clubhouse Meet Me program. The Circle City Clubhouse is a clubhouse in Indianapolis that invites dignitaries to virtual tours of the clubhouse and then has a discussion with them after the tour. So far, Circle City has had 10 to 15 legislators tour the clubhouse via Zoom. Another idea was to develop a promotional video for Clubhouse Indiana. We would also like to send representatives from clubhouses to the State House and have state representatives or senators give a tour of the State House and help clubhouse members learn how to navigate through the political process. We want to get involved with the local Chamber of Commerce, Rotary Club, and WANA's organization. We also discussed an idea borrowed from a Massachusetts clubhouse, which is called having an Employment Awareness Day at the State House. We would invite a state legislator or official to give an award to the clubhouse employment partner. Another suggestion was to get primary candidates' attention before their schedule becomes too busy and while they are trying to impress voters. Some of the things that we have accomplished are 2 committee members prepared a directory with a list of current state level officials for every clubhouse in Indiana. And we encourage clubhouses to support voter registration. One of our top priorities was to talk to other clubhouses in Indiana on how to begin calculating funding needs in order to ask for more support from the state. 2 members from the committee brought that up in a coalition web call with the Indiana clubhouses. We are just a young committee, but we are trying to get better doing advocacy for the coalition. Now I would like to turn it over to Andy, who will go into more detail on the funding issue.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Mike. So for my little part of this presentation, I'll focus specifically on lessons that we learned, unfortunately, the hard way about clubhouse advocacy for funding specifically. As Mike mentioned briefly, in 2010, the funding stream used by clubhouses in the state of Indiana, or the Carriage houses, was taken away. So the coalition responded in a big way. I will talk a little bit about that process and the lessons we learned along the way. My apologies that this will be somewhat US-centric. It is my hope that colleagues from outside the US will find some parallels in their government structures. So we lost our funding, and then we wrote letters, we went on TV, we held big fundraisers, we gave tours to legislators, we wrote new grant requests, we talked to city governments, we appeared before various commissions, we enlisted our friends in the disability community, we wrote letters to the editor, we yelled at the governor. Basically, we pulled out all the stops, and we learned rather a lot. Pretty much everything that we thought we knew was wrong, and the amount of stuff that we didn't know was rather enormous. So I'm going to do a few lessons here, and here is lesson number 1. Get educated, and do it now. If we had had a more complete understanding of the systems and structures that we would need to be advocating with, we probably could have shaved years off of our advocacy efforts. So as we began, the first thing that we thought we should do, of course, is reach out to our local elected officials. So we did. we'd always had pretty good relationships in our local communities, and we knew who our state senators were and who our representatives were. So we called them and we invited them to our clubhouses. We had big bipartisan meetings with them. We gave them tours, told them what was going on, and we asked them for help. And invariably, they all said really nice things. They said that this was a problem that needed to be fixed, and they would look into how it could be fixed. And then we learned lesson number 2. That was elected officials will always want to help and say nice things. Legislators are our friends, and they can be and have been to us very helpful in any number of things, most especially the folks on committees affecting funding. These people are very important. However, what we learned is the administration does most of the work to make the government run, not the elected officials. So as an addition to lesson 2, we learned that our elected officials, well, in Indiana, they're part-time. Most often, they really don't have any idea what to do. So they turn to the administration. In the US, when we say administration, we generally mean a small number of politically appointed people and a giant number of professional civil servants, people whose job this is regardless of who's in power. Sometimes we pejoratively call these people bureaucrats. And then we bumped into lesson number 3. There are a lot of administrators and bureaucrats. So we had to find out who the important ones were to us, and we had to get to know them. And although these positions go by different names in different states, in the US, there are a few key players at the state level. And we discovered over time that there are 4 of these key players that are going to be essential to us. Jody, if you could put up the red boxes. Perfect. They are, down at the bottom there, the director of the Department of Mental Health and the director of the Medicaid program. And their boss is usually the Secretary of Health and Human Services or something like that. And their boss is the governor. So it took us a while to learn all of this. And worse, at every level, we thought we had arrived. Oh, look, the bureau chief of the Office of Public Planning in the Department of Mental Health and Addictions loves us. We're good. But no, not really. There are a lot of levels. However, these 4 people were really important to us. And at least in the States, I bet they are for you too. So we started to get to know these people. We called our friends who had connections to those folks, and we invited them to the clubhouse and sent letters, and they all responded that we were awesome and they would help. And here we found, of course, lesson number 4. Sometimes the people in government, well, they won't tell you the truth. More often than not, during a sustained advocacy effort, my experience is that we will often encounter barriers and pitfalls and sometimes surprising enemies before we get to the win that we're looking for. And here is my final lesson, lesson 5. Government officials come and go. We don't, and perseverance pays. So we learn to stay with it, even now, even after our crisis, maybe especially when we're not currently in jeopardy, we have to stay with it. Choose the goals you're looking for, like the ones that Susan mentioned in the state of Indiana, and just don't stop. So if Jody could put up a slide with those lessons, I put them down here. If you think it's interesting, we can get you a copy of that later, or you can contact me after this panel, and I would be happy to shoot them to you. Okay, so that's our advice for what it's worth, or those are our lessons for what they're worth. Now, if you could do the next slide, we'll do a little advice. If you and your clubhouse are not in jeopardy currently, that's great. Our experience says that you should make sure you know this stuff before you need it. The government and funding streams can be fickle, so start now. Bring people to the clubhouse always, having conversations with any people from the government in the clubhouse is better than in their office. Make sure you know those big four in particular if you're in the States. Be active. Go to the fundraisers, call their offices, write them letters, make them friends. You may not even know the people who will wind up being your best allies are. Little note, the person that we wound up having as our best ally that helped us make change, we had never met her. We bumped into her at a dinner in Washington, D.C. Just happened to be the person that was able to make the change for us. And in the end, it seems to us the most important lesson is never, ever give up. Keep moving forward. Now, I think that Lori from Magnolia House wanted to jump back in before we move to our friends from overseas. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. I just wanted to also emphasize the never give up. The reform in Medicaid that I described, that happened a few years ago, we've been trying to get to happen for 20 years. So it really can take a long time, and there may be alternative solutions, but I wanted to emphasize that. And also what Andy defined, the people that have been really key for us are just the figures that he described. And so I wanted to just emphasize that. And one third idea, healthcare reform is very active right now, pre-COVID, and now there's a lot of emphasis again on so many people needing mental health supports. So I think there are real opportunities for clubhouses, even more than ever before, for us to get our voices heard and our service funded. Thanks. Now over to Norway.
Thank you. Hi all. My name is Torhild Stimo, and I'm the director of the Norwegian coalition called Fontenehus Norge. And together with me, I have Anna.
Yes, my name is Anna, and I'm an advisor at the Norwegian coalition. Nice to see you all.
Hello, my name is David. I'm a member of Fontenehus Oslo and one of two Clubhouse members who sit on the board of the Norwegian coalition. I'd like to thank our colleagues in Ohio and Indiana for a wonderful presentation, and thank you very much. Anna, Torhild and myself are going to present a brief history and description of the Norwegian coalition. It includes some of our ups and downs, achievements, lessons learned, key moments and relationships we have managed to build over the years. A copy of this presentation will also be made available to anyone interested after the webinar. Anna.
Thank you. Yes, to start the history then. In 2012, there were 8 clubhouses, of which 4 of them was accredited. Each clubhouse was responsible to finding their own funding and working for their own advocacy. Some of these clubhouses were in pretty dire straits when they came to funding and were really hanging on by a thread. A couple of years before this, 2 clubhouses, one from Hønefoss and the other one from Oslo, thought it would be a good idea to join all the 8 clubhouses by forming a coalition. Based on the Danish coalition at that time, actually, with its own statutes and a single paid member of staff. Then Svein Jacobsen, who's a lobbyist and one of the original Oslo Clubhouse founders, was hired. In addition, the coalition would also have its own independent board. Then to the salary, in order to fund Svein's salary, the first year the chairman of the new board guaranteed for this salary out of his own pocket, while the coalition searched for his own funding. Svein then had the task to guarantee for his own salary and also to raise further funds available from the state and various foundations so that the coalition could grow. And this he successfully managed to achieve. We're lucky for that. Today, the coalition is mainly funded by the state, and each clubhouse also contributes by paying an annual fee. David.
The coalition decided from the start that it would set some hairy and ambitious goals to gain state funding. We wanted to establish 20 clubhouses by 2020, and to ensure quality, each clubhouse would aim to be accredited by Clubhouse International, understand and follow the international standards. The Clubhouse Coalition is owned by and answerable to each clubhouse in Norway. Each year we hold a national general meeting where any suggestions, possible directives, changes to the statutes, etc. are discussed and voted on. At the same time, the clubhouses also elects or re-elects the members of the coalition board. Today, the coalition has a strong team of 4 paid employees. 3 are full-time and 1 has a 20% position. Each staff member has the necessary competence and their talents complement each other. Torhild, the director, is responsible for political advocacy and establishing new clubhouses. Anna is responsible for our new database and for the yearly surveys. She's also involved in establishing new clubhouses. Hovard, our new addition to the team, is also a clubhouse member, and he is responsible for marketing and public relations. Svein still continues to advocate and lobby on behalf of the clubhouses. The coalition also has an elected, very strong, engaged and hands-on board, which is comprised of 9 individuals. There are 2 clubhouse employees and 2 members recruited from within the Norwegian clubhouses. This ensures that the voice of the clubhouse staff and members are heard. There are also 5 external directors with diverse backgrounds from big business, law, marketing, and academia and research. Each of the external members has reached the top of their professions, and they're all highly respected within their own individual fields. Together, they voluntarily donate a considerable amount of their time to the clubhouse cause, and are happy to use their own extensive networks when needed. Together, they add up to an extremely valuable resource for the Norwegian coalition. Some of the challenges and difficulties the coalition faced at the start were to gain recognition and to be taken seriously by the various stakeholders. It was something we really had to work hard at. We really had to produce all the relevant facts, figures and statistics in order to support the individual member stories. On one occasion, in the beginning, we were given a real awakening when the State Secretary from the Ministry of Health and Care Services asked, "If you are that good, why are there no more clubhouses in Norway?" This was the moment our goal of 20 in 2020 was born. Torhild.
Thank you, David. So what has the Norwegian coalition managed to achieve between 2012 and up until now? I want to start by listing 3 major accomplishments. The national funding has increased from 5 million up until 48.5 million kroner. We have grown from 8 clubhouses until almost 20 clubhouses. All clubhouses has a plan, are accredited or has a plan to be. Through our advocacy, we now have cross-party support across the Norwegian political spectrum. National funding for the Norwegian clubhouses is now listed and is a part of the government's annual state budget, which is presented to the Norwegian Parliament each year. The opposition also lists Norwegian clubhouses in their own alternative budgets. On average, the Norwegian clubhouses receive around 85% of their funding from the states. Around 50% of this amount comes from the national government and the rest from the local municipalities. The coalition also has managed to put in place 2 national research projects, and we expect them to be completed by Christmas. We have designed and run a national member database, which is used by every clubhouse and ensures that we are always able to present the latest facts, figures, and statistics whenever we need them. We are currently working on a national marketing campaign. Up until now, our strategy has been to directly approach the relevant stakeholders, such as politicians, health and professionals, academics, and etc. So now we soon have 20 clubhouses in Norway, 10 of which are accredited, 6 which have been open for less than 4 years and are currently waiting to be accredited or have strong ambitions to be so. We have 4 more new clubhouses currently in the startup phase and who will open their doors to welcome new members shortly. We are really proud to report that 20 in 2020 has been achieved. Since 2012, we have been involved in helping to establish 12 new clubhouses. We can help a new clubhouse find the right people, establish a board, hire the director, the first 2 staff, and find the right location. We can also help with the funding and connecting a new clubhouse with a well-functioning clubhouse so that they can act as a mentor. We have now gained so much experience that when someone would like to open a new clubhouse, we have all necessary competence to be able to offer a pretty streamlined solution based on best practice, which really does reduce the cost and workload for everyone involved. Anna.
Thank you. I'm now going to reveal some of the lessons we have learned. Guess you're quite excited. And inspired by Andy, I counted actually, and we also have 5 lessons learned. So the first one, it's so important to always have the correct facts and figures. You know, at the start, we did not have this information available, and we were more or less had to guess. This meant that the people who really mattered, they didn't take us that seriously, actually. We also learned that it's absolutely necessary that the coalition had the confidence of the clubhouses to act fast and make decisions when the opportunities suddenly arise, and that we are not hindered by any bureaucratic red tape. And the key word to build confidence is to work with the trust of the clubhouses and to have the clearest communication. So important. And number 3, to build a stable community amongst all the clubhouses. Solidarity is important, and being able to work together, share our experiences, and learn from each other. When the coalition started, most of the clubhouses were not that used to working with other clubhouses, nor did they have any experience of having a coalition. So we needed to learn about the new structures and to create a culture for better cooperation and sharing knowledge. Number 4, it's important to know how to play a wider or broader role in both the local and national community. And before the clubhouse learned how to be better at promoting themselves, many of the key decision makers were unable to see the clubhouse relevance. And the politicians had no idea, or almost no idea, of the clubhouse's potential and what they really were able to do and to offer their members and their whole community. So we believe that when a clubhouse is part of an recognized and respected coalition, it adds credibility and professionalism to each individual clubhouse name. And this is something the clubhouse can utilize, such as when it comes to marketing and making themselves more visible and important within the whole community. And lesson number 5, last but not least, we have learned that even the impossible is possible. Because when we originally set our goals in 2013, I think, the goal of 20 clubhouses by 2020, many did not really believe it, including us. But now it's a reality, and we really do believe that the impossible is possible. So I hand it over to David.
Although the day-to-day running of the Norwegian coalition takes up a lot of our time, we are always looking to the future. Here are some of the future ambitious and hairy goals. We would like 30% of all members to be young adults under the age of 30. We would like to fund and organise even more and greater research. We would like to build a Clubhouse partnership initiative working with business and state sectors. We've already managed to achieve several TEPs through working with national companies in several clubhouses in Norway. We would like every person in Norway to know who we are and what we do. We are applying to be the organisation chosen for the annual national charity fundraising campaign run by Norwegian State Television.
That's quite crazy.
That's very crazy. If chosen, the publicity would be enormous in Norway for the Clubhouse movement. This year's event also raised over $23 million. And we would like to be able to give everyone in Norway who needs a clubhouse the opportunity to join one. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. For those that have a question they would like to ask, please submit your questions in the Q&A panel located in the bottom right-hand side of your screen, or by pressing the 3-dot option along the bottom and selecting the Q&A panel. Your first question is, what is the first step someone should take if they are interested in beginning a regional coalition?
So in terms of who has the most experience with beginning a coalition, Andy, were you at the beginning of the very first Clubhouse Indiana iteration, as well as the new iteration? Would you like to touch on that?
I'm happy to, Andrew. Just real briefly, at least for our, I don't know if when we say region, we are talking about an area perhaps in Northern Europe or something like that. I know for the States in particular, it was our experience that there are a lot of programs that call themselves clubhouses that probably already exist, or something like a clubhouse that thinks it's doing a clubhouse. So I think the 2 pieces of advice that I would think about first is, 1, call everybody involved in any mental health all over the region. In the States, that would be community mental health centers and NAMI and Mental Health America and key consumer organizations and all of those. I'm not sure overseas. And find out who's doing what and invite them to your clubhouse. And the second thing I would do would be to do what everybody's already doing, marching all over town and giving presentations.
So since you're unfamiliar with the foreign perspective, why don't we ask Oslo about this as well?
In my opinion, when we were able to get the things going, that was when we hired paid staff with, as Andy talks about, with knowledge about the system. You have to hire someone with the competence of the knowledge of what you need to be done. So our goal was to create state funding, so we had to hire someone with that knowledge.
Knowledge of the political
Yeah,
system
knowledge of the
and how to lobby.
Yeah.
And
All
is, who's bold enough? Oh.
So Magnolia, would you have anything to contribute to that as well?
The only thing I would add is like some of the things we described and in our process. One of which is to talk with Clubhouse International, and you write a letter to Clubhouse International to establish a coalition. That's sort of the formal way to just take that very first step.
Okay. I have a question here from Michael Hay from Genesis House for Susan Crouch. How does your committee leadership work, and is it based on the clubhouse or is it based on individuals?
Our committee meets randomly, and we all work together. We have one person who leads the committee and then has suggestions from other members in the committee.
Your next question: what do you see as the most significant obstacle in developing a strong, active, and effective coalition?
So Oslo, I think in terms of being strong and long-lasting and effective, you guys have the quarter on the market here. So I'm going to throw this one at you guys.
Hva var det egentlig?
Obstacles.
Obstacles.
Hindringene.
Ja. The obstacles to get the clubhouses united and strong, maybe, could be one obstacle. To not get the funding is one obstacle. Yeah, not be taken seriously as we were in the beginning. It's been very important to me to both increase the faglighet, professionality for the clubhouses, so that people from outside know what we do, that we are not just cozy. Yeah, and to get all the clubhouses to not just tell the good stories, but to gather statistics.
I think that it's we have to be those of us who work in the coalition has to be really humble, really listening to the clubhouses, each and every clubhouse, because to make sure that they want us, because we're working for them, and if they feel that we are not, I don't think the coalition would last very long or be effective
Thank you. The next question is, can Norway tell us a little bit about their wonderful database system?
Yeah, I hope it's as wonderful as you think, but it's we have had a database which has been kind of it hasn't been one, but we have been using the same systems on FileMaker, but it hasn't been connected. So each and every clubhouse has had their own server and had to send their numbers to us, and then we had to take it together and make one national report and national statistics. So, but we organized it as a project from the coalition, and we had a group consisting of members and staff from several clubhouses, to have them to own this project, because otherwise it wouldn't be successful, I think. And then I think it took a year of research and investigating, which platform is better than another, and so on, gathering experiences from other users. And now we're implementing, or at the end of the implementing phase, and it's always the most challenging. And we the big trap then which we often fall in, is that we don't take it seriously enough, the implementing phase. How many people, that's going to learn a new system that they haven't seen before, and they're kind of afraid and skeptic. It's understandable, but yeah. So we have tried to. The database is trying to answer some of the questions asked in CPQ, some of the questions asked in our own work and study reports or surveys, and some of the questions that are asked in our another survey. So we're trying to make it jeg kommer ikke på det.
Available.
Yeah, or relevant. Yeah, sorry. So I don't know if that answered your question, or.
I think so. Next question from Russell Roten. When most clubhouses are right now just doing their best to manage their own work, how do you people find time to do the work that the coalition requires? This could be anyone.
I can add from the Norwegian perspective. We've been hit hard, but we've not been hit as hard as many other countries, and most of the clubhouses have managed to just carry on, not in the same capacity as before, but we're still going, and things. Some are successful, some are challenged, but we're trying to keep things as normal as we can, and that's working fine. So hopefully that's the way things will continue.
I'm sorry, David. I think I misrepresented the question a little bit. The idea is that just in general, without COVID, we're all super busy at our own clubhouses and just continuously overworked. So how do you guys find time to balance that with coalition work?
But the Norwegian coalition is privileged because we are 3.2 hired staff working only for the coalition.
But we were not in the beginning, so that was our experience. We didn't manage because I was in the group working as a staff here at Club Fontenehus in Oslo. While we were talking about creating a coalition. And I sat in the board before we raised the money to hire. It was very difficult, very difficult. We didn't have the right knowledge and we didn't have the time. So in my experience, we were running and not managing it, not accomplishing what we wanted. So when we managed to gather a board which consists of also professionals and to hire a paid staff with what we needed, then things started to happen.
Yeah, so I think the general answer to Russell's question is that the paid staff on a coalition is a big part of how that happens for you guys, especially.
From our point of view.
Andy?
Well, yeah, Andrew, I was just going to say this is the thing, right? This is the constant sort of issue for coalitions. I know, at least for ours, and I imagine for everybody else's. Indiana, we don't have the resources right now for paid staff people for the coalition. So all the work is delegated to the committees, and then from the committees down to the individual clubhouses when available. So basically the answer is it takes dedicated people like yourself and like Susan and the members of all the clubhouses in our coalition to help assist with that work, because you're right, we have our own problems to deal with, and finding time is always difficult. And that's just the clubhouse way, isn't it? We are inundated with work, inundated with things to do, and there's never enough time and there's never enough people. And that's what makes the urgency of the coalition work so much like the urgency of the clubhouse work itself. So the answer is delegate, engage, and cross your fingers.
All right, Jody, you got the,
It looks
Greg.
like Greg
Yes,
wants to make a
Greg.
comment.
Yeah, in its simplest form, we have just taken the time once a week on a Tuesday morning to get together. We invite any Clubhouse member can join in with that. We welcome that feedback. We recognize the importance of it, and we take that 1 hour out of our time to discuss that. And then we meet for the next day for about 30 minutes to an hour, and we'll discuss the website and make any live edits that are needed. But it's just commitment and dedication, and just taking that time on a regular basis, so you get used to it. It just becomes part of your schedule.
And just to piggyback off of what Greg said, to make it a part of your unit work. So if it's in the clubhouse and it's member and staff engaged day in and day out on those projects, especially right now through the pandemic, if you're working virtually and you're struggling to find work to do over Zoom or over the internet, it's a great project. You're doing research, you're reaching out to other clubhouses, it's a perfect time for it.
Thank you, everyone. This is going to be our last question for today. What do you think is the most important role for a Clubhouse coalition? And this is for each group to answer.
I'd be happy to give it a run for us in Indiana. There are the three things: helping clubhouses develop, helping clubhouses stay great, and helping find funding for those clubhouses. But my knee-jerk is helping clubhouse develop is probably our number one piece.
I would reiterate exactly the same thing, although I think funding is probably primary because it's so difficult. So I think if there is a funding mechanism, great, then you can move forward with it. But yeah, that's been our biggest challenge.
Yeah, from our point of view as well, funding has been central, and to gather the clubhouses because we are so strong together. And to be the voice of the clubhouses towards national politicians and stakeholders. And of course, accreditation.
Always
The quality
accreditation.
of the clubhouse.
Yeah, the quality.
Yeah.
All right. So first of all, I just have to thank every one of our panelists who's donated their time and expertise to this workshop. And I also want to thank IBCI and Jody for doing your best to ensure that this all ran as smoothly as can be expected. And most importantly, I want to thank you, everyone in the audience, for attending. The PowerPoint slides and video recording of this presentation will be sent out to clubhouses next week. So if you missed anything, fret not. Also, a little bit of an outro here. So as we've heard many times today, clubhouse coalitions are a critical component of the worldwide clubhouse community. Therefore, I'm excited to announce that Clubhouse International has begun the process to establish a formalized working group of recognized coalitions which will be able to work together to effectively promote the clubhouse vision, mission, and inspiration around the world. More information will be available as this moves forward. So please stay tuned for our next webinar, which will be November 12th on the topic of promoting healthy lifestyles in our clubhouse communities. Thank you guys for being here, and thank you guys for putting up with me hosting.
Thank you, Andrew. If we have not answered your question, please send an email to wanawebinar@fountainhouse.org. As Andrew mentioned, the PowerPoint for today's session will be sent directly to everyone in attendance, and the recording will be made available next week. There will be a survey on screen once the event ends. Please take a moment to fill it out to give us your feedback. Thank you for coming to the webinar. Please be on the lookout for announcements regarding our future webinars. Have a great day, everyone.